Hello, dear Brian.
Hi, dear Haley. How are you doing? In a very different setting.
Very different setting. I'm at my boyfriend's family's house, and we came for a birthday yesterday and planning to leave a little bit after this call. If the universe agrees with us, um, it will be fine. It's a bit of a comedic event.
It's comedic.
I think it's comedic and it's sweet.
Okay.
So,
Um, you referred to him as your boyfriend as opposed to partner,
the dude,
the dude. All right.
I think it's a new place and trying to be posh.
Yeah. Dude. I like
The
dude.
dude. Yeah, it's the dude's family. So we're planning on leaving a little bit after we speak and heading back home. If
Okay.
fingers crossed.
So, quick story for you. And I wrote a Facebook piece on it, but I don't assume that everyone who listens to our conversations reads my Facebook page, but I went to the cleaners to pick up my shirts and drop off others. And the shirt in front was totally shredded. I mean, totally.
Like put through a shredder almost.
Well, a great rip down the back and two great rips down the front. And the guy says, Brian, we put it through the wash. Um, he said, uh, uh, it got all shredded, and I think it's probably time to let this one go. So I said to him immediately, uh, I said, that's what they're going to say about me. After the wash, he got shredded, and it's time to
Time
let
to
him
let
go.
go. But this one can live on as like a dusting rag or something in your house, no?
Yeah.
It
It's
continues. I
repurposing.
yeah. I feel like we're in such a comedic yet serious phase right now, like a window. We had an eclipse at the end of March, on March 29th. And I feel like since then, it's just been this weird comedy drama terror story where you could take something as like, that could have been your favorite shirt that you have so many memories with. And oh my, can you imagine the histories in each one of those threads?
Yeah,
And now it's just like your shirt's shredded.
yeah. And I said I have a dozen blue ones to replace it.
But they're
You
not
know,
this shirt.
when you're gray haired, you try to wear some blue. You know,
But you look good in blue too.
yeah. It's a good color for me, and black and
Yeah.
gray. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, it's a weird time. I'm also in this phase of like, it could be really funny, or you could just sit down and cry. I'm choosing the funny.
So Haley, another thing I wanted to share with you. Uh, uh, and the reviews of my book, the memoir, Prince of a Boy, uh, have been great. The one that just came out is phenomenal. And I wrote back to the guy who's a gay Catholic theologian,
Lovely.
and wrote the review for the Jesuit American magazine. Um, it's a web space. I said, I feel seen. I feel, you know, his review was so clear in capturing all the nuances of my book and the overlook of the book. And I posted it for people to read. It's long, uh, but I read it again this morning. I thought, wow, he gets me. And someone wrote, "You must be very, very proud." I said, "That's not what I'm feeling. I'm not. It's not that I'm feeling proud. I'm feeling understood."
You've I'm so happy for you. And wow, what a great gift.
Oh, I said I have in my drawer a letter from my sister that was just amazing. And was keeping it even before she died, so I now have to read it again. There are a couple pieces of mail from my mother, or some someone special in my life that I've tucked away. Uh, but this is one of those things that I'd want to tuck away.
Would you say that this is, or this could be, or this possibly is, a letter from God to you?
The review,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a great perspective. Uh, it's sort of like a weld, you're getting towards the end, you're starting to shred. Uh, well done, Brian. And
Nice.
that feels good because I've worked hard on my relationship with God.
And I think, as I was saying, and we sort of saw this, like we have these weird things going on right now where we can choose to be really sad about it or to really go into the comedy of it or the gentleness of it. And I think sometimes in these sort of events, it is still God speaking to us. And it is, it's not an egotistical thing, it's not a pride thing. It's just the validation that we seek isn't from other people, it is truly from God.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for affirmations. It feels nice to be affirmed by somebody who read your book, 30 years ago and it helped them. But uh, pride is not something that is a major characteristic of who I am. I mean, it's just I I'm I'm grateful for my life. I'm I'm I guess I'm proud of myself for enduring, but Haley, my life has been about giving,
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a giver, you're looking for places to give, and you don't really have time to sit back and think about what you just did, right? Even returning the grocery cart all the way across the parking lot into the store, into the right bin, right? You don't sit there and go, "Yay, Brian."
Well, I think, would you say that pride and honor are the same things or different? Like, do you need to be proud of yourself to honor yourself?
That's a good question. Did you say that the before I go back to that, did you say that the review was a love letter from God or a letter from God?
I would say a love letter.
Yeah.
I think it's a letter from God expressing his love and pride in you. Like, it's a direct connection to God saying, you're enough.
Uh-huh. And
It is a love letter because I do believe God is love. So it's definitely a love letter.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm in the process of trying to figure out where I'm going next, in my life. Uh, and I can get my arms around just writing and on Facebook posts. I don't see myself writing another book. Uh, I've got uh, an infection in my intestinal tract. I'm seeing the doctor tomorrow, but those kind of things shake you up because your body is shredding, and you don't know whether it's more serious than just a hemorrhoid or is it cancer. You know, you
Mhm.
you don't know. And Ray says, "Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't." He said, "We don't know. We take it a step at a time. Don't start going there." Well, of course, I go there.
If you say don't go there, I'm going.
I'm going. Don't tell me. Do not tell me what to do.
But if you said go there, it's great for you, I'd be like, nah.
I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea. So, so we don't know what's happening. And you asked the difference between pride and honor. I'm amazed that I remember that, because I have such short-term memory loss. I
Well,
do.
it has been a hot 2 minutes, Brian's.
I know. Yeah, we're talking about cancer. I mean, that's so. At any rate, uh, I, I don't. I don't know if you can honor yourself. Do we need to be honored by others, or can how do we honor ourselves?
I think the way that I'm trying to do is to honor myself by always sort of taking care of myself, always taking the time to sort of slow down with my decisions and take like intuitive decisions. And I
Okay.
believe that if I'm taking care of myself, then I'm honoring myself. But I think a big part of honor is honesty.
Yes.
And so it is being truth, like being in truth to myself. But then I throw in this other word, pride. And pride, I think, is a very prickly word. It's almost like you don't want to have pride because that means you're an egotistical narcissist. But I
Yeah.
do think that we need pride to be able to sort of motivate ourselves to do a good job, to do better than yesterday. I don't know.
Yeah.
Words like I'm with you on this. I'm like when I asked you the question, I was like, that's a good question because do we need pride to honor ourselves, and do we need to honor ourselves to feel pride?
Yeah. I like your definition, or at least your use of the word honor when you talk about honoring yourself and taking care of yourself, um, going to the doctor if you need to,
Yeah,
getting your hair cut.
getting
But
help if we need help.
yeah, and giving yourself help, right? Clipping your toenails or whatever you need to do to keep the body functioning.
Hmm.
That's honoring it.
Yeah.
Uh, I honor my body as a vehicle. Um, Incidentally, after 2 months, we finally got our car back from the garage, and
Oh, I'm with you in that
and, and it
department.
cost us 3 times the value of the car. I mean, it just makes no sense. And people say
To be baselining, you do have a classic.
it is a classic, and it's a great part of raising my life and identity. We've had it for 30 years, and it's so. But going back to honor, okay. I think of my body as the car, right?
Hmm.
And I owe it. Uh, I owe it attention. I need to have the gas put in and the oil changed, and I owe it to my body, right? Just as I owe it to the car. But I'm not my body, right? Because when I die, my body's gonna, well, it's already shredding. Who knows what that's gonna be like when I die? But uh, uh, when I die, I'm not gonna be the thing that died. You know, my
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue on this energy, whatever it is. And if we're reincarnated, I don't know what I'll be. Remember I told you, I think, in the beginning of the book. Have you read the book yet?
I haven't read the book yet.
Okay, well, you're in Mexico and it's harder to
Hmm.
get. I just finished
Now
reading.
there's tariffs and all that stuff. So
Oh God,
your
will,
book is
will,
very expensive for me.
will you take him from us?
No, I don't even have to think about that. It's just a
I
hard
don't know
no.
what I don't know what country to ask, but so so we move on. And if we're reincarnated, so in the beginning of my book, I talk about going to a psychic fair with Ray because he was taking a paranormal psychology class to get credits to graduate because they weren't accepting his seminary credits.
Hmm.
So in the beginning, so I went to a psychic fair, and the, everyone said, "Oh, you got to go see this guy. He does future lives. He does your future." So I said, "Oh, okay, uh, I'll go in." So I sat with him, and he said, "Brian, I don't want to do your future. What I'm getting strong feelings of is your past, and you've always been a healer, a medicine man, a shaman, a high priest, whatever. So I'm, first of all, don't know what to do with it because that's what I feel.
Right.
Not that I was a shaman. I don't have to have had a prior life as a shaman, but that he gets in just this 5 minute session, he gets that he said, you're going to change the world.
Sweet.
So when I die, if there's another life, uh, which I hope you'll be in, um, uh, I don't know what it'll be, but I think it'll be uh, the light will shine.
I think the light will, I think part of, and this is probably going to go into like our old soul question that is still an open question.
Yeah.
I think like, the evolution of the soul is to be in the light more and more and more and more until you're a master of the light. I do believe that. And I'm reading a book right now by Elif Shayek called There Are Rivers in the Sky. And it starts with a raindrop. And it's literally a book about how this raindrop changes through the different sort of reincarnations of this raindrop and sort of experiencing, right? It started off as a raindrop with this crazy king. And then it was, the next story is now it's a raindrop, a piece of a river where a little baby was born.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like later on, it's a tear. And it's just, I think, we think about it sort of that death, that shredding. It's more that you sort of go back into the vapor, and then it's more like, where are you going to drop next?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what adventure is that going to be? And I do believe that adventure gets better and better each lifetime.
So Haley, is there a point at which you've gone through life and reached that level?
I think so. I think that there is a point where you have fully returned to unconditional love. Like every thought, word, and action is unconditional love. I think at that point, you're done with this University of Earth and you either become like a master guide for other humans, or there's another university that you go to, another planet or something in this grand cosmos that you end up, as a soul and as that raindrop exploring. But I do think that our time as humans is our human experience ends when we've hit unconditional love, and then we have a different experience. I don't know what that experience is because my consciousness right now is totally human.
Okay, so I'm feeling obviously that I'm closer to death than I am to birth.
Being born.
I'm 77. So how many, I looked up the actuary.
Possibly 20, 30.
More years?
Yeah.
That's not what they say. They say 6 to 10.
Why not?
Well, it depends. I don't, but for me, sometimes I feel like my journey's done, that I've done what I was supposed to do. And I don't know if it means now rest or it means now come hither. Right?
I think it means enjoy more.
Yeah.
You don't need to prove anything else now. You've done enough. You are enough. Just enjoy now. And I think that is part of that sort of lesson in terms of, going back to unconditional love, is that we don't need to prove that we're worthy of it. And of course, we have our passions. Yours is writing, obviously, and mine is
speaking.
Yeah, and I'm speaking and other things too. Writing is growing. But I think, we do that stuff because that connects us into that stream of unconditional love. But at the same time, we are dealing with the human psyche, which says, are you doing this good enough? Is it good enough? Are enough people going to read it? Are enough people going to be your clients? So we're still human, dealing with that sort of duality and that sort of pull on our presence. And I think we have, the sooner we get to that point of, regardless of what you do, it's enough. You're still loved. I'm God and I still love you.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we would get to that at 20 years old so we can enjoy the rest of life and just be free with our life. Mm-hmm. And I think perhaps your letter from God was like, you're enough, like enjoy now, whether it's a day, whether it's 30 years, just enjoy. Like you've earned your right to enjoy everything that is around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do.
Yeah, and I think
So
it's just
I make it a point to notice.
yeah,
Uh,
and I think is it ending? I mean, every day ends, you know?
right.
So there's an ending. Every no is an ending. Every time you say yes, that's a beginning. So it's more about like, this might be your last autobiographical book. That wasn't right.
No, I got it. Autobiography.
Is it
You
your
know what?
last
You
book?
know what? Say it again.
Autobiographical?
No. Autobiographical.
But autobiographical.
Right.
Yeah. What a full book. But it might be your last book of that nature. I don't think it's your last book.
Yeah.
I think you have at least two, three books, maybe another kid's book in there. I think
Yeah. I
I
think it
think
might have
I think you're just at the end of this book that you're like, this is the end.
because it's the end of my life. I mean, it's the end of my story.
And
Uh,
also you just
how did
finished
I get here?
recording. Yeah, and you
Right.
just finished recording the voice part of it.
Yeah.
So like for the creation and the nurturing of this book, the seed growing into this lovely plant, it's getting to the point now where you're like, okay, this plant's okay without me. So that is an ending.
Hmm.
And I
You know,
think it's a profound ending because this book has been a big part of your life for a while.
it defines me. It's defined
Mhm.
my life. I mean, uh, one reviewer said they wish that they had heard more about Ray in the book, and I feel
The
like,
next book.
yeah, well, I've already done that. Are you guys brothers? I mean, Ray's in every book on being gay and gray. He's, I think
You know what would be a great book? If you
what
and Ray co-wrote a book about loving relationships.
Ray. I'll put it to him when he gets back. But
He might be like, Haley, stop.
Ray's, Ray's message for me is, Brian, do whatever you want, just don't include me.
All right, well, we'll scale that back a bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Haley, publishers don't put any effort into marketing.
Mm-mm.
Zero. They used to do all the marketing. And so I've had to do all the marketing, which means every single day I have to think of something that will bring the book to the attention of people. Because if, in the review, I'm going to send you the review.
Yeah, please do. I would love to read it.
Um, uh, what was I going to say?
The marketing that you're doing for the book.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Uh, in marketing, it becomes um, about you, and if people don't buy it, or people uh, don't read it, and you think, why not? And then you think, well, if they wrote a memoir, would you read it? Probably not, unless they were somebody really close to me, somebody I really wanted to know their story. Uh, but it's a struggle. So one of the things about getting older is that you take more chances. So here goes.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Okay. So throughout my life, and you know this, but the book talks about it, I've been told repeatedly from the nun back in 8th grade, the psychics, the therapist who, after the first session, had a dream about me at the top of Mount Fuji, at the very top of consciousness. I knew him one day. And then after that, the spiritual guide that I started to follow says, no, 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 you come up and sit with me. You're at that level. What? And then you start to promote yourself, with your book.
Which
Boy,
I think you need pride for.
yeah, but it feels like to me it takes away from optimum, awareness, that it takes away from optimum consciousness, unless I'm conscious throughout the process that
Right.
this is not what I want. Well, why are you doing it then? Well, I want people to get something, you know, out of the book. I mean, the basic message, as the reviewer said, is, you know, put a face on the issue, tell your story. Because if you tell your story in loving kindness, and this goes for every issue, you know, Palestinian Jew, right? If sitting and hearing the story, it's going to change the dynamic between those two people. If you hear the story and not look at them by all the bias that's been attached to them, you know, for as long as you've known them. So for me, my success in helping straight people mostly uh, get past their fear, because there was a lot of fear in the beginning, is to give them some information gently, lovingly, that helps them relax and think, well, I can handle this. You know, what's the big whoop? You know, he's I like him, and he's gay. And I think I don't know if I told you the story. And in the book, I tell the story of I was with some school teachers and who were doing a program in New Hampshire for private school teachers. We were sex educators, they were private school teachers. And you were asked to do the same workshop twice, one in the morning, one in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was on being gay. And in the morning, there was, you know, a decent turnout. The afternoon, standing room only, right? You couldn't get into it. And as we were leaving the parking lot, this woman drove quickly down to stop us. And she jumped out of the car. I hadn't gotten into my car yet. And she said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "I did not want you coming. I opposed you coming. It was wrong in my mind for you to be coming. And I refused to go into your workshop. I didn't want to give witness to it. But I stood outside this afternoon. And Brian, I don't know what to do with you."
I think, which is a really good comment. Like, I
It
think it's
is.
success.
It is. She said, "I'm a fundamentalist Christian. Homosexuality is opposed to everything I believe in. But I heard you today, and I can't think about the issue in the same way again. But if I go home and tell my kids that I'm making an exception now for homosexuals, what happens to all the framework that I've been building for them?" And I said, "You know, I can't solve that problem for you, but I now am a card in the hand you're holding. God has put me, we were supposed to meet. I'm a card. You can't get rid of me. Even if you throw the card away, I'm going to be there, you know, in your being your whole life, because I'm going to be that agitation that says, so why did I feel that? Why did I like him? And why did I feel like changing my mind?" So when I talk about promoting the book, for me, primarily, it's hoping that people will get that story, understand, you know, that you can make changes in your relationships with other people by being loving, kind,
And
and by listening to their stories and telling your own.
yeah, I think it's throughout my life, I've also heard like you have to tell your story, and I'm just like, is there any way I can go around this by not telling my story?
No, there
But
isn't.
I think it is, and we see it time and time and time again that people really only change their minds or change their ways when they've experienced a personal story.
I know a lot about you. I don't know all about you, you know. Uh,
Hmm.
so you are telling your story, at least in this medium,
It's,
because I'm
yeah,
getting that I didn't, you know.
yeah. And I think, I tell a bit of my story with each one of my clients if it's appropriate for them to experience like a human side of what we're talking about. I share my story and but I haven't quite got the courage to put it into a book.
Yeah, you don't have to.
That might come later.
Yeah, it will come later.
Or maybe
Because
I will tell it to you and you will write it.
maybe, maybe, or I could write a short story, with it. Uh, maybe. But Haley, you are telling your story. You don't have to write it down. It's out there. And each thing you tell about yourself that you hadn't told about yourself to me or to others is opening you up. You know,
Yeah.
it's liberating you from anything that held you back. It's liberating you from that.
And I think, if we come back to the pride and honor thing, is like that is honoring myself because we can only truly be more light if we're opening up and we're coming away from that shame of, I don't want to tell my story for one reason or another. Really honoring ourselves and being like, you know what, my story's good. I'm going to share it. And, if one person gets it, that's enough. So I think, that's the first part of honoring ourselves. But there is that sort of pride afterwards that comes with us achieving something that was difficult.
Okay.
And
Not
again,
pride.
I think that, that is part of the honoring circle is that it takes courage to honor yourself. And then after you honor yourself, I think it's okay to feel pride. I think because that's like an extension of honoring and being like, wow, I did this. I did a good job. I wrote this book. I put it into audio. I'm doing the marketing to kind of sit back and be like, wow, I did that. That's amazing. I think that's honoring yourself again. Of course, you can take it further and write another book about how great you are.
Well, the and
I don't know if that's healthy.
no, but the reviewer did say that there were places in which I had to look up the word, um, but there was a lot of praise, that I was putting out for myself. And one can approach it that I'm doing that, or one can say that he's telling the story because it impacted somebody. Like, for instance,
Hmm.
people will write and say, your workshop was the best one we've ever had. Well, now take a look at what just was just said. It was the first training on homosexuality in a corporation, and there were a lot of people in the beginning years who were nervous about coming to it, nervous about participating in it, but they were told to by their boss. So hearing back that it was the most popular workshop makes you stop and think. Not it was because me. That's not. I don't go there. I go to first. Thank you for telling me. I'm glad, but how in the mid '80s did the subject of homosexuality rise to a popularity through a corporate workshop? That's why I tell the story.
Hmm.
I shared a story that after the NSA talk, I got a really nice card that Ray happened to save, and I put it in the book. I'm not putting it in the book because I want you all to know that I'm, wonderful. I put it in the book because the person who wrote it felt so affirmed. She's a lesbian, and she was here around her peers, all people in the NSA, all secret stuff. But there they were, standing and clapping for one of her family. And she was just blown away. So the story is not that I blew her away, but that the experience blew her away. And she told me about it. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. And I think
That,
it's
that's the way I feel. The subtitle of my book was going to be called A Prince of a Boy
right.
because that's the way the whole thing started. And then a friend said you should have a subtitle, and the subtitle should be How One Gay Catholic Helped Change the World. I never would have put that on my book, but this person I really trust.
Hmm.
We've loved each other since college. I trust her completely. So I thought, okay, maybe that title will grab some Catholics and grab some gay people. The title of Prince of a Boy, no one will know what it's about, right? Unless they knew who I was. But so I put it up there. But I think for some people, it's self-aggrandizement. Why would you
What
say
does
that?
that mean? Let's break that word down. Self, what?
Your aggrandizement. You are praising yourself to a limit beyond which is reasonable.
Okay.
I would say that's what
But
it
I
means.
would say that that's probably the unhealthy side of honoring yourself and taking pride in yourself.
Yes, and being accused of it
Mm-hmm.
uh, when you had hoped what people got was not that, look at me, I did all this stuff, but look at the story. It's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing story how you go from getting fired and everybody hating you, in Detroit. You're anathema. A woman said she was going to throw up when I walked in the room. That's how scary it was to be a homosexual in 1974. And then, wait a second, now you're speaking to the NSA and you're getting a standing ovation. How did that happen? Well, there's a story behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't write the story in advance and I didn't plan the story. It just kept happening. And I kept saying yes to the universe. Do you want to do a radio show? Sure. Would can we videotape you giving a presentation? Sure. Yes, 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 yes. Never will you videotape me doing this presentation and let me sell it. That was never, ever, ever part of.
But it is the part of life now. So, going to your point where publishers no longer do the marketing, they very much rely on the person to do the marketing, and hopefully the person's an influencer.
Uh-huh.
And so when we're talking about like sort of you saying yes to these openings and these opportunities from the universe, which were people inviting you and asking you if you could do this, it's very different to what the world is now, where it's very constructed and it is people saying, can you take a video of me doing this? Can you take my photo of me doing this?
Right. That's not me.
Do you think that, but in what you were doing, sort of in being of service and being of helping people, do you think that, where it is now, do you think that that's of service to people?
Helping the people or.
Yeah. So like when you're talking about sort of how in your career you were invited and sort of these doors, these opportunities came to you. And you sort of knew you were helping people based on the reactions that you were getting. If you look at where we are today with people doing similar things in the public, but rather than getting the opportunities, they're just creating the opportunities. They're asking people to film it. They're asking people to take their photos. They're constructing this whole thing.
Right.
Do you think that's still able to help people?
Well, if that's what's necessary in today's world, and today's world is very different than the world I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in. Uh, people have more opportunities, but they're also more competition. They're
That's very
completely,
true.
I think to be considered an influencer, you have to have 100,000 followings. I have 5,000 people on my Facebook page, but none of them know me except for a handful that read me regularly.
But they're
And
influenced by you nonetheless.
if they stop and read me,
Yeah.
if see what, and mostly they don't leave a mark to say they stopped and read it. A lot of people do that, but I would not be an influencer, on Facebook, except for the people who, want to see what I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. That's okay. I don't think I've ever worked as hard as I have in terms of promoting uh, this book, because it's totally on my shoulders, and to not do it is a disservice to the book,
Mm-hmm.
and to me. You know, uh,
Do you
so
enjoy it? Like, obviously, this is a new thing, this whole marketing thing, but do you enjoy the process that you're creating for yourself?
some of it I do. Like before we got on today, I contacted Barnes and Noble in Fort Lauderdale, and they gave me their email address, and I wrote them about, would you consider, selling my book? It's available through Ingram's. This is the publisher, and I'm sure they're going to say yes. I sent them the spectacular review and told them about my life locally. So I'm a local. Um, uh, so that kind of thing, yes. Good for you, Brian. You tracked them down on the internet. You got the phone number. Every time you dial the phone number, you got that stupid message that, I have to dial
Another
again.
door opens.
Yeah. So I was persistent though in dialing the same number over and over again, sometimes with the prefix and sometimes without. And finally, it came through. And so good for you for sticking
Being
it out,
consistent.
right? And then once, I'll tell you, Haley, once I got this person on the phone, she wasn't the person to make the decision, but she was going to give me the email address. We started talking, and she talked about nuns, and I said, "Oh, I had nuns. I had 16 years of Catholic education." She said, "My eighth grade nun." I said, "My eighth grade nun was the best teacher I've ever had," and she said, "Wow, So it started off. Will you consider carrying my book? To two people being carried away in a
Connected.
discussion about their education in eighth grade and the nuns who gave it to them. That's fun. You
That's
know,
fun.
that's the fun part
Yeah.
for me is
A
the
real moment.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, I hope your book is there, and I would love for you to do a reading. How fun would that be to do a reading in Barnes and Noble?
Yeah, I've not done readings uh, in a way that I thought was fun,
Oh,
except at a gay bookstore where it was packed. But at Barnes and Noble, you've got people reading newspapers. One time, I did a Barnes and Noble at one of my books, and they handed me a microphone and said, "Everybody, this is Brian McNaught. He's going to talk about his new book." Well, people are reading newspapers. They're reading their books. They don't want to be disturbed. And I say, "Thank you all for your attention." I didn't have any of their attention. So I hated it.
so it's
Uh,
more the smaller
but what's
bookstores.
but what's happening is the Stonewall National Museum, at my request, is doing a interview kind of book thing,
Oh,
and
nice.
we picked the date in early December because I didn't want to miss the snowbirds who go back up north for 6 months, and soon will leave. And so, but I am working that. I'm sending messages to friends to say, please circle the date. You know,
Nice.
I'm already thinking about what would be a fun thing to serve rather than wine and cheese. Everything is wine and cheese, wine and cheese. So I thought, what about cider and donuts? Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because cider is non-alcoholic, but it's also a fun thing to drink.
Yeah,
And
and it's
so,
going to be cool there. Oh, but you're in Florida.
yeah, but it's the first leading week to Christmas.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought so.
but that is the fun part of it, where it's like, yeah, you can do a book reading, but at the same time, turn it into your book reading, which makes it memorable.
yes. I want people to say, do you remember when he served apple cider and donuts? You know, uh, I love brie. Why was there no brie? Brie served? Or I like my
Always
red
fun.
wine. I wanted my wine. I went there thinking I was going to get wine. Um, so
But
let's shake it up.
you could advertise it as sort of like cider and donuts night.
Well, I've already started planning that in people's heads. I
Yeah.
think, what would you think about cider and donut? I haven't gotten a response yet, but every time I mentioned it to myself, I think that's fun and
Um,
cute, and
yeah,
and
definitely worth doing.
yeah, it would create a good time that was memorable,
Yeah.
right? So people don't
Fun.
go up to a bar and say, water, just water, thank you, just water, thank you, right? Uh,
That will be fun.
yeah.
So it sounds like it's still like, as much as we're talking about the ending of your book, it's still very much in the midlife.
Oh, Haley, yes, I'm working really hard. on getting it in front of people. I think the big sales, if they're going to be, will be from religion professors because Cascade Books markets to the educational group
Hmm.
and people who are educating others on religious issues and progressive religious issues, right? So I could see a professor deciding this would be a good book for my students to read. So who knows what's going to happen to the book, right? At some time, I'm going to stop promoting. I'd be and just take a Brian. You did a great job. I'm proud of you, but let it go and go back into the garden, right?
I know that we don't like to talk about political things, but do you ever sit and think to yourself why your book is coming out now during the time when these kind of books are being burned?
It's amazing to me that my whole life was DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They didn't call it that when I started. It was just a talk about homosexuality. But then when I got into the corporations and colleges started it too,
Mm-hmm.
they said we have a diversity officer. You do, and that officer, told me I was part of a bigger program where they talked about Black issues and women's issues, right? So, so my whole life was DEI. That's what brought me all over the world was DEI. My piece was the gay piece, gay, lesbian,
Mm-hmm.
bisexual, transgender. But but I was DEI. So here my book comes out, and Trump is forbidding DEI in any federal agency, and will cut off all federal funds to any college that is using it.
And is
Every,
now declaring that the US will only trade with countries that do not have DEI.
yeah,
Like,
you cannot mention transgender people
yeah.
in the
Well, and I
federal
think
government.
it's, obviously your niche is the transgender, but also I was seeing today like how, this is everything that is not white man.
That's exactly right.
So,
Yeah,
I
I
saw
represent
today,
part of it. But
yeah, I saw today that they were taking down all of these murals of these, black people that had been killed by police and like really kicked off sort of huge movements. And they were destroying the murals and stuff. So I think I wonder because we sort of started this call how this time was sort of comedic and you could just sit down and cry or you just choose to laugh. And I wonder, when you look at your book and you put so much work into it, and then you look at sort of the world that is receiving your book from a very grander scale, you could very much just sit down and cry.
well, or you could say it's the perfect book at the
Perfect
perfect
time.
time because that's the subject. DEI
Mm-hmm.
is the subject in today's world, and here is this book about a guy who did the diversity part, the godfather of gay diversity training, the New York Times said. So we got to bring him into this discussion, not me personally, but, what's this book about? How was he so successful with his DEI stuff? But Haley, I had not heard about murals being painted
Yeah.
over.
No, they're not being painted over. They're being pushed over, like with bulldozers.
That horrifies me. It,
Yeah.
it, it horrifies me. And
It's,
it's almost begs, uh, is this true? I mean, does it
I mean,
really?
that's a very deep, deep philosophical physics question.
Yeah.
Um, but it is, I think in each one of us in this day and age, there are things we can look at and just be in utter terror. And we can just sit down and be like, what's the point of this? I'm just going to sit down and cry. Or we can be like, there must be a reason. Let me go for it.
Right, right. This is a challenge, but it's also part of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, in my feeling, all those murals are going to go back up in
Oh, I
40.
think
You
I
know,
agree with you. And those murals will go back up and louder and grander than before.
and they'll have gay flags again flying over federal facilities, and they'll return the word gay and black and native. You know what they want? They're angry that we talk to them about how they're special, but they're not more special than
Mm-hmm.
a gay person or a transgender person and that pissed them off
It was,
because the world was founded by white people. White Christians founded the world.
well, white, yeah, and men, white
Oh,
male,
white. That's it. I'm sorry. White Christian men and
yeah,
white men.
white Christian men.
Yeah, and uh, uh, they have been threatened. Not everybody. Lots of straight white men, are horrified that
Absolutely.
you know, but there are a lot of straight white men who are cheering that they don't have to be uh, politically correct anymore, or they can say whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. It's I feel like it's almost, like the reason why I left banking was for that very specific reason where I was just like, it's all a joke. And I feel like I'm in that same, what you thought was just sort of in that industry, in that environment. I feel like it's just now magnified. So, like those meetings that we had, where it was just blatant, like zero PC anywhere. And I feel like that's just now, like, instead of them just being in one office, they're just running free.
Well, you grew up in Zimbabwe, and there was not apartheid in Zimbabwe.
Well, there was a much smaller sense of apartheid, a quieter sense. So my
Well,
generation was the first generation to be integrated into schools, black and white schools.
is that right?
Yeah.
Well, Musk grew up in South Africa, where white is right,
Mm-hmm.
and he brought that with him to the United States. Uh,
That's, white is right is the same in Zimbabwe.
yeah,
It's a colonial thing.
white is right. White man's burden to take these black people and educate them,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll never be equal. They should never be paid the same wage, right? And so that comes over here to this country, and the people whose background is apartheid have no problem pushing it. So no gay, no. Listen,
Well, keep in mind too, apartheid in South Africa was endorsed by the US until there was enough public pressure.
yeah, I cornered the chairman of the board of GM. My dad was an executive at GM, and so the chairman of the board was at our house at a party, and I cornered him, and I said, I was like maybe in 11th grade. I said, when is GM going to get out of South Africa? Because that was the big deal. Get American businesses out of South Africa, let them feel the pinch, right? And boy, was it hard because money speaks. If you're making money, don't push me about pulling out because it's a complicated issue. We're really not sure what the full impact is. Let's keep talking about it while we make the money on the side. I can't hear you.
Okay. I grew up in experiencing apartheid South Africa. I remember we used to take vacations to South Africa. Plus, my parents were incredibly racist, colonial, whatever word you want to use. And I remember that first holiday where black people were allowed on the same beach as us. And I remember my dad saying the world has gone to shit.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I remember that very blatantly. But I do also very much, what I have learned since then was that never stopped.
No, what your father said has been said multiple times.
Multiple times. And the idea of apartheid was on a grand scale in South Africa, but it was happening in the US in every single company, in every single school, and it wasn't just black people, it was anybody that was not the straight white man. And I
Yeah,
think, we can cry and say this is just terrifying, or we can say there must be a reason for all of this.
exactly.
There
And
must be a reason that we're all talking about. Is it okay to take DEI out?
mhm.
And what happens if we do that? And I think, the same thing with Musk was like, all right, what happens if a billionaire pays for an election
And
and
loses.
gets to do whatever he wants with the government and then gets super prideful and tries to pay for another election and he starts losing?
Yeah, he lost in Wisconsin on
Yeah.
the,
But I think that is very much a response to the public pressure. He
yeah,
only lost Wisconsin because everybody just has had their wits worth with this guy now.
yeah, sick
And
of,
yeah, and I think the reason all of this is happening is so that we can stand up and say, on a personal level, this is not okay with me.
yeah. And you've just given me, you know, uh, uh, I was a trained warrior during the civil rights movement, right? And in every movement, women's movement, elderly, all the things that came along, especially the Black issue in the beginning, and then obviously the gay issue. But I'm a veteran of those battles. And rather than pitch a tent and go into the woods, and say with wisdom that, it's going to get better, I can't leave the fight. Even though the book is kind of like a wave goodbye in some ways, I'm a veteran and I can't. And a lot of people today need help from veterans, uh, understanding what tactics to use, and trusting that it will get better. Love conquers all.
Love conquers all. And we have the next door factory starting. So I think it's a perfect time. We only have a minute left of this call to wrap up.
Okay, so if you will, because what people don't know is I go home, I get off this, I type up what the title for it, type up a summary, which sometimes blows my mind up. What happened in that conversation? There was no one topic. What would you, Haley, say was the topic of today's conversation?
I think it's
One thing.
one thing.
Yeah.
Does
Theme.
pride equal honor?
What's that?
Does pride equal honor? Do we need pride to have honor, or do we need honor to have pride?
Okay. I'll go
Something
with
along
that.
those lines.
Yeah.
But I think your letter from God is also rather special.
I like that. I
Are we
really,
open?
I,
Are we open enough to receive those letters from God?
I like that one. Uh, I think I might use that
Yeah.
because I think the honor thing and pride thing might get, put.
Oh, pride. Yeah.
Well, it might complicate things.
Might complicate things.
Yeah. All
Well,
right, honey.
I
Love
have
you.
thoroughly enjoyed today, and I'm so glad that I was able to speak to you today.
Yes, fun, and I'll
And
send
please
you
send me the
a review.
letter.
Yeah. Okay, honey.
We'll
I love
speak
you.
in 2 weeks.
Safe travel home.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.